Hi guys, this is a video on the hallucinations in the play Macbeth. I shall take you through some notes and an extract in terms of preparing for the exam. You can catch all of my information and notes at StaceyWay on Instagram or StaceyWay on YouTube. We can do in terms of starting an English literature essay is sometimes we can define the term that we're asked about. So here, hallucinations, what does it mean? If we trace hallucinations back to the Latin, then it means wander in the mind or dream or talk unreasonably or ramble in thought. This is particularly interesting when we start looking at Lady Macbeth in Act 5, Scene 1. So this idea of rambling in thought, we can link to the fact that she ends the play in prose, the only Shakespearean main character to do that. So this rambling idea suits the notion that not only is she rambling and speaking in prose, but also it's very conversational, it's confessional, and it kind of links to the fact that she is seeing the blood on her hands as a vision. And again, just a little bit in terms of deeper analysis, to talk unreasonably is interesting because remember the doctor and the gentlewoman who are watching her roam around the castle in the sleepwalking scene don't understand what it is that she's seeing when she makes confessions like Bank was buried, the Thane of Fife had a wife, where is she now? So the actual root word of hallucination, going back to Latin, actually fits this scene down to the letter. If we were to take the root Greek word, so the Greek word, they'll never be able to pronounce it, but again, it means wander in mind, but be at a loss, be beside oneself with grief, joy, perplexity, be distraught. Now, perplexity is a good one because, again, the confusion of the main character and his wife is absolutely up for debate. The idea that they are distraught is evident, much so with Lady Macbeth more than it is with him. There's a section where he actually questions the prophecies of the witches and how they've kind of almost led him a merry dance, and he refers to them as the juggling fiends. And then if we wanted again just to look at that word, if we're really going for the grade 9, then we can look at the ending, the Latin ending of the word to prophecy, which was to rave. And in Old English, more interesting, even though it's obsolete now, it meant to deceive. Obviously, deception is one of our biggest themes. When we're talking about the witches working for the devil and for Satan, then naturally deception will lead us to the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which was our first real instance of deception. So it's clear here that the word hallucination actually fits everything that Macbeth is doing and everything that Shakespeare is detailing. Some additional notes before I put an exam-style extract up are there for you. So we know that the visions and hallucinations recur throughout the play. They serve as reminders that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are culpable for the growing body count and how things are beginning to worsen for the pair, aren't they? Naturally, the dagger is the first hallucination we see, which is floating. It's covered in blood. It points him towards the king's chamber. So metaphorically, we could talk about that. This is the journey that Macbeth is about to embark on, and it's a journey to disloyalty, it's a journey to regicide, to high treason, to immorality, and obviously the darkness of the supernatural and the witches and the devil, all of those things that are kind of intermingled with the immorality of what the supernatural does to this character. As things begin to worsen for the pair, obviously it becomes Banquo's ghost sitting in the chair at the feast. Again, is that his conscious, is that, if you look at the A-level videos I've made, is that Carl Jung's shadow, so his subconscious, his dark thoughts. And then obviously the hard-headed, stubborn Lady Macbeth eventually gives into the visions when we see her naturally with the blood on her hands and out-damned spot. Exam style practice then here is an extract from Act 2 Scene 1. It is this a dagger I see before me? I would pause the video here. I would detail 3 to 4 quotations that I would analyse before I show you my notes and what I would say about the rest of the play, and also an example introduction. This is perfect practice for your GCSE exam, and I actually think it's a decent question really. On initial reading, then the first things I would pick out obviously is the dagger reference at the start, which leads into a rhetorical question. I would be looking at fatal vision. Look what Shakespeare does with the punctuation there. So the comma before and the comma after naturally segregates it from the rest of the text. We get the heat oppressed brain. We get the idea that it's an instrument. Within that, you need to watch my video on this speech, guys, because he uses the trochaic inversion. The trochaic inversion means that he is going to place stress on grabbing and clutching the dagger. So we can see that he's desperate to take the crown. Within there, naturally, when we're note making the dagger, we need to metaphorically explain what that is representing. Why is the vision fatal? We want to link that to the root word fate. Why does he feel like his brain is heat oppressed? Why does it refer to it as an instrument, which reminds us of earlier on in the play? And then we get this idea that there's this graphic image of the gouts of blood that are on the dagger but weren't there prior. So again, the violent stabbing of the king in his sleep, which we're going to detail now. So my notes are as follows. So if we do, is this a dagger? Although I don't think that's very judicious. What we want to do metaphorically is talk about how it actually represents his tragic flaw of over-ambition. And then when we're referencing the rest of the play, we can do things like overleap and vaulting ambition. Remember, we need to move around the play seamlessly in order to hit the 7 to 9. The other thing about the dagger is it's the weapon of cowardice. He stabs the king when he is asleep. We know it's a brutal death as well because of the reference to how much blood was spilled when Lady Macbeth sees it. I think if we're going for the A-level argument, I think potentially the dagger represents, as I said earlier, Carl Jung's shadow. That is the dark part of our brain that we don't want people to know about. So there I would be referencing the black and deep desires from prior. So if this is us accessing his subconscious thoughts, his dark thoughts, then naturally we do want to reference Act 1, Scene 3, black and deep desires, because we're almost like tapping into that, the desire obviously of being the king. And then we can argue that this is the work of the witches if they are working for Satan in this task to usurp a god, then we get it almost here. So the supernatural really kind of manipulating Macbeth, if you like. The reason they can do that is because he's got a weakness. He is our tragic hero. Next, I will be looking at fatal vision. Obviously, fatal means destiny, from the word fate, obviously. So now we start thinking about whether Macbeth's death is fated in this way. Has he had the choice to avoid fate? When we start looking at the goddess Hecate and the fact that she is the goddess of the crossroads, and this idea of good versus evil, being human or being inhumane, being moral or immoral, exploration of humanity here is the question. The heat oppressed brain. Obviously, I would be analysing oppressed there, because remember, it's a burden. It weighs somebody down. If you are oppressed, you are trapped. Is Macbeth trapped here between the witches and the supernatural and his own desires and his own ambition? Could it just be pressure, or could it even be stress? Could he feel the pressure and the stress of the badgering of Lady Macbeth when she's questioned his masculinity, and obviously these visions and prophecies that the witches have kind of placed into his hands? The instrument reminds me of Banquo seeing the instruments of darkness. It's a tool, isn't it? An instrument is a tool that is used. I think in this instance as well, when we talk about instruments, are we talking about Macbeth being played by the witches? Perfect quotation to support that is at the end when he acknowledges that they are the juggling fiends, as if he has become the joke that they have kind of exploited and corrupted. So again, moving seamlessly around the text is what we want for a 7 through 9. Not necessarily beginning with the extract, but being able to move it around confidently. When doing the rest of the play, then we need to look at Banquo's ghost, the bloody child, the armed head, the line of 8 kings, and obviously Lady Macbeth without damn spot. The apparitions are huge in Act 4 because a lot of students are referencing the witches here, but it's the apparitions that actually give him the new prophecies. So when we start looking at things like the armed head potentially foreshadows Macbeth being decapitated by Macduff. So it's a warning about his up-and-coming death. So actually the hallucination there is warning him about what's to happen, his punishment, his eternal punishment for kind of defying God's law. The armed head as well could be the death of Banquo or anybody kind of in battle, because remember we've got Macbeth as a tyrant now. The bloody child is an excellent one in terms of argument, because the bloody child is a clear reference to Lady Macduff's children being slaughtered. It's an attempt of the Fleance assassination, but also I think we need to reference Lady Macbeth here when she says she would have dashed the brains out with her nipple had she so sworn to do it, and when she talks about milking the babe. The bloody child is potentially the child that they have lost as a couple. It can also kind of act again as this stern warning to Macbeth that killing the king was futile because he doesn't have an heir to the throne, nor does he have a legacy. So it's kind of almost become a pointless activity here, which is then kind of compounded by the line of 8 kings, 8 being just how long it's going to reign, God's order, God's monarchy. Within the 8 kings is Fleance, and we know that Fleance escaped. So again, it's Macbeth being warned about his downfall and how quickly it's going to come about now that we are close to the end. Banquo's ghost does itself. It's guilt. It's a reminder of the negative characteristics that Macbeth now has as a human being. One being that he is now disloyal. He is a disloyal traitor who hasn't just betrayed the king now, but has also betrayed his close kind of confidant or friend, whichever word you prefer there, in Banquo. Ghost as well. He's going to be haunted, isn't he? Our damn spot is straightforward. I've done a million videos on Lady Macbeth, so please check them out on YouTube. But we want to be looking at the fact that it's damned, so a reference to eternal damnation and hell. This is a potential opening. We might start with, as a common symbol running throughout the play, hallucinations represent many different ideas, from Macbeth's insecurity to Lady Macbeth's guilt. It could be argued that the witches have created these visions in order to haunt, traumatise and force the title character into regicide. That's obviously not exhaustive, but please write an essay, guys. Send it to me at Stacey Ray on Instagram or s386@gmail.com, and then have a look. A massive good luck in your studying.